can we revolutionize the way electronic circuits are implemented with advancements in conductive technology? Join me, Todd Baker, in this episode of The Current, where we discover the capabilities of integrated electronics directly into the environment that allows customer products to be taken to the next level. Hi, I'm Todd Baker, Corporate Vice President of Engineering at Future Electronics. And we've talked a lot about on this podcast all the different changes that are happening in the electronics industry right now, all the different devices and applications that are coming where electronics are needed that they've never been used before, and how IoT has changed that. And we've certainly seen that over the last 5 years. We're now seeing that go into places like furniture, like doormats, where you have a need for these types of electronic components, areas we never would have thought of 10 years ago. But companies like Amazon and others have changed things so much for us that these devices, and a lot of times these companies that don't actually have electrical engineers on staff, are finding they need electronics in their devices. And there are a lot of companies that are trying to address that. And we've talked a lot about how the major semiconductor companies out there are addressing this in some ways, but there's a lot of new upstarting companies and upcoming companies that are bringing new solutions to bear. And today I have the privilege to be talking to Matt Johnson of Bare Conductive. So Matt, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time. Talk to me a little bit about yourself and talk to me a little bit about Bare Conductive.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. I think that's a great introduction to us, to the context that we're playing in, putting electronics in places that people didn't expect. So, my name is Matt Johnson, CEO and co-founder of Bare Conductive. Bare Conductive is really a company focused on integrating electronics into the environment. The technology set that we use to do that is printed electronics. Technically, we are a printed electronics company, but for reasons I'm sure we'll get into, we don't always view ourselves as that. We really view ourselves as a sensor company and an IoT company. Frequently people ask, like, how did you get into this? I think I've had an interesting journey. We started the company actually as a result of a dual master's program in the UK. So it was a program focused on industrial design, but with a really heavy engineering component. And we actually started with the creation of a unique conductive ink for a very practical reason, which is that we wanted to access printed electronics technology for prototyping. I think people listening to the podcast, and certainly people at Future, understand how important it is to get your hands on technology in order to create new things. And the printed electronics industry, I feel, kind of chronically restricts access to new technologies. So we started the company with the intent of, hey, why don't we empower people to help us figure out what the future of these technologies are? And that's really paid off for us.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think, there's some amazing videos of things you guys are doing and some amazing growth and new areas that we certainly see you guys going into, and really attacking markets and general consumer needs out there. That's really exciting. What are some of the applications right now from your side that you're seeing a lot of that growth in, and some maybe new things that people hadn't considered before?
So I would say that the best thing about what I do is that people see it as an enabling technology, which is great. That's exactly what we want. And so people are constantly coming to us with use cases that we didn't expect. And to me, that's the power of the internet in general, actually, is that you may have a problem that maybe you view as niche, but actually is a problem shared across lots of people in different industries. And we want you to bring that to us. The other side of that is that we have to have the discipline to pick where to focus. We could focus in way too many places and not develop that growth. So for us, after quite a lot of consumption of information and work, we think there are really 3 focused areas where the technology makes sense. The first is touchless interfaces, and that's certainly reinforced by the COVID-19 pandemic. The next is occupancy sensing, and the last is water leak sensing. Yeah. So I think to back up for a second, because people might say, hey, how are those things connected to each other? All of our technology is focused on a simple technology stack, which is a printed electrode. So, most people would say, oh, it's a printed sensor. So we really would call it a printed electrode connected to a piece of hardware. within that, there's a lot of subtlety, and our IP exists in the way that the printed pattern of conductive ink connects to settings in firmware and choices in hardware. But essentially, to massively oversimplify what we do, we're making smart stickers that you can stick onto the environment. And to close the loop there, we think there's some great opportunities for touchless interfaces, occupancy sensing, so monitoring people in and out of space, and detecting water leaks.
Right, right. Yeah, and I think that's really exciting. And in those areas, I think the conductive ink that you have, it really, I mean, when it comes down to it, you're using capacitive sense properties that have been being used for the last 10, 15 years
Yep.
pretty commonly. I think that we've gotten used to that in a
Yep.
PCB. Typically, there's a copper pore of some kind,
Yep.
or you've got some kind of copper tracing on a PCB.
Mm-hmm.
What's the benefit, compared
Sure.
to that? I think the solution that we've seen typically, has been that or an ITO layer on an LCD screen. Or, I think in some cases we've got engineers that we've seen doing that on like a flex board, but it's still just a
Yeah.
copper core on flex.
Yeah.
So what's the benefit of your conductive ink compared to maybe those more traditional solutions?
Sure. So I would say I would expand that to what's the benefit of an approach of using conductive ink? Because in fact, we do have an ink that we use quite a lot, but then we have partners where we source ink from as well. And the core IP for us is the design of that printed sensor and then the hardware and the firmware. And I think so. You're totally right. When I meet a kind of cynical engineer, they say, oh, come on, capacitive touch is in my smartphone, it's in the track of my laptop. Definitely. Right. Capacitive touch is well established for interfaces and also for some precision measurement during precision non-contact measurement during some manufacturing processes and non-contact liquid level sensing. So it's a technology that does exist in devices around us, but there is and it's a bit esoteric, but we think there are some really distinct advantages in capacitive sensing for the ability to use low cost printed conductors over a large scale. So without diving, this could be an entire podcast in itself, but the key here is that with a printed capacitive sensor, with the right design, you can achieve a large, low cost, high precision device. Normally, you have to pick two of those, right? You make it big and precise and it's expensive, or you make it big and imprecise and it's cheap. So there's an interesting optimization that happens there. But the ability to use a conformable substrate again and again becomes really attractive. So when we look at water leak sensing, I was on a call this morning with an IoT integrator who typically uses water leak sensing rope. And he described some of the advantages of the rope. It's well established, but also some of the challenges. And it always comes down to the practicalities. What he described is that the rope is quite stiff. Getting the rope to conform to the floor where the water leak is going to be involves using lots of self-adhesive cable tie mounts. And he described that frequently the majority of the cost of the installation is just the labor because the rope is so hard to work with. So the idea of having a self-adhesive tape that detects water and is conformable to the surface is super attractive. Outside of the industry, that may seem trivial, but it's not trivial when it comes down to how do you really scale this to every room in a hotel, or every square foot of a factory, or every part of a data center. And so I think it's the combination of precision and cost and coverage with the conformability that gives printed capacitive sensors some really interesting advantages.
Right, right. And you show in a lot of your videos on the website, you guys have off the shelf, ready to go, kind of designs already done with that, and some, common, layouts for gesture recognition or for object detection in a floor tile, things like that. And those are great. What about those customer and design engineers that may look at that and say, hey, that's cool, but it's not quite my application. I need something that looks like this. Is it customizable? And is that something that you can work with customers on?
Yeah, there's generally three ways we engage with customers. The first is with the dev kit. So we've shipped over 500,000 dev kits now. So clearly we're covering a big set of use cases already with lots of happy customers. And I think as an engineer, I want access to technology without barrier. So I love dev kits too. I'd love to just order something, and I'll tell you what, I'll call you when I have a problem, right? I don't want the pitch. I just want to play with it and see what I think. So we offer that. The second level is where we might need to start providing some more specific support. And so we've built a pretty robust model for doing that. And essentially that's about internal dev kits where the tool chain is not quite as user friendly as the external dev kits. And so what might happen is you would say, hey, I've got a water leak sensing application, and I tried an off-the-shelf dev kit and it doesn't have the sensitivity I require, or I need a really specific substrate. I've got a high temperature application or something. So what we would then do is say, okay, no problem. We'll adapt an existing design and print onto a specific substrate for you and manage that process. And that's a pretty quick process,
Okay.
I think the third level is where we typically go through the second level, we get to a development project. And that, is really exciting for us. I think for us, the best example of that would be IKEA, where we're building sensors into the surface of furniture. And, they have definitely played with our dev kits a lot. And we've done prototyping to really make it a product. We have to have an intimate relationship. And, for that, we build out a big statement of work. But I think the key is providing those steps, because we know that it takes, you have to build confidence and you have to build trust and advocacy in an organization, and you do that through prototypes.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's absolutely key. So, I mean, are you finding that a lot of those, those customers you're working with, do they have double E's? Are you talking to double E's, or are you talking to people that this is their first time really working with electronics? I got to believe IKEA, not a company I think probably has a lot of double E's on staff.
So yeah, I'm here to talk about Bare Conductive, but I will advertise for them for free.
Good.
Yeah, actually, this is something we find that's quite surprising, is that I think companies like IKEA, which are viewed as, not incredibly sophisticated from an electronic standpoint, I think that's a misunderstanding of them, especially over the last few years, because I think any company that's installing things into a building or into a home, it is cognizant that IoT is going to touch them. And some of them are purposefully remaining agnostic to it, but they're informed, and others are embracing it. And so, I would say that at the best, we definitely work with people that are incredibly sophisticated double E's. I mean, very, really impressive people. And that's, speaking personally, that's super fun, because it's just awesome. We engage and we discover new things together. It's great. I think on the other end, it's very rare for us to work with a company who doesn't at least have someone who can build a prototype with a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino.
Right.
And I think that's, I would say 10 years ago, the Arduinos were viewed as toys, and they were kind of degraded for their ease of use and their lack of capability. But I think people maybe miss the point a bit. What we see now is that actually we can build a dev kit that's in the Arduino universe, and any customer that we work with is capable of following a tutorial and getting something to work. And the benefit there is that then I'm not pitching to them, they're calling me for support.
Yeah, right,
They
exactly.
say, hey, I built something cool, my boss loves it, but how do we actually make this work for real? How do we make 1,000 of these or 10,000? That's a great conversation, because then I just call them and say, oh, okay, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Hey, by the way, why don't we take this to level 2? We'll do some customization for you.
Right. And is that where you see a lot? Because I know you guys have your sensors that you guys, have already created for water detection, for gesture recognition, and that kind of stuff. But are you seeing a lot of customization of the actual application circuit tied into your ink?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably something I would like to, you make me think I should probably chart that, because I get the sense intuitively we are doing half as much now as we were doing in March.
Right.
It just feels, and I think we probably have a library of 50 to 80 different print designs, something like that are well tested and understood. I think that then we have a kind of equivalent different settings in firmware. Um,
Right.
but actually, out of that, there's probably 20 designs that are really useful. And so it was hard to know when we started how much customization would be required. Would we
Right.
need a library of 10,000 different things? But use cases tend to look really similar to each other. The customization level tends to happen more on the communication side, which is
Right.
why the next big project for us is a full LoRaWAN integration and a well-documented API, because really what we find is a water leak is overwhelmingly similar. The big customization is how much water do you care about and how fast. So do you care
Right.
about, a liter of water, a milliliter of water? What is it, and what matters to you in the
Right.
sensitivity? But then the rest of the stack is where people want to customize. So we need to empower customers to do that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think those tools for creation are critically important. So, and we've talked about the water leak sensors, and then the other thing that I think is really cool is, the detection that a package has been delivered and is sitting there on your doorstep, has been and that kind of thing. That obviously, once you've been able to detect that with your core technology, it's then a matter of how do I get that data up onto the
Yeah,
cloud so that a user can
yeah,
see on his phone wherever they are that I've got a package, or I've had a pipe that's burst in my
yeah,
bathroom.
yeah.
Those kinds of things. What tools are you guys providing and things like that to help a customer that's doing the design get that information up onto the cloud?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think from a technology perspective, it seems the most straightforward. I would
Right.
say a layperson would go, I've got a smartphone, I've got tons of apps. But
Yep.
from a infrastructure perspective and a cost perspective, it's unquestionably the most challenging aspect of our business. I think for that reason, we haven't delivered any consumer-facing connectivity yet, because of the complexity of the number of devices and the number of standards that we have to interact with. So right now, we're really focused on delivering to large customers that have a contiguous infrastructure. We think that LoRaWAN is really the winner in our space.
Yeah.
We have built other low power radio solutions which are very bespoke to specific customers, which have proven the basic concept of the technology, but LoRaWAN is making it much more portable. And I think we envision that there will be a moment where there will be able to be configuration of the sensor done on the phone as well,
Right.
because we think there's a lot of value in how tunable our sensors really are. But the way that we really deliver that is still a bit open.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So put another way, we love when customers have the ability to interact with an API and have an understanding of what kind of data might matter to them and what kind of data might, what the prioritization is. That's something we can respond to really well.
Right, right. And I think that makes a lot of sense because every single design out there has to be customized in some way. I think it's very
Yeah.
hard to find this is the one way everybody's going to do it this way. That's certainly not what we see in the engineers that we work with, within our customer base. And I think that's just going to be always the case across the board because engineers like to innovate. We like to do things
Yeah.
our way. Every application, every company, every market that we're trying to build a product for sees the world differently. And that's certainly one of the areas that I think, our engineering staff and future electronics engineering staff is going to be very helpful to a Bare Conductive customer as well, because we can come in and say, oh, well, they've got a great solution for LoRaWAN that you guys are
Yeah.
working on right now, or you guys have a great solution that connects to Wi-Fi, but you want to do this over cellular CAT-M. No
Yeah.
problem. We know exactly how to do that. We've done 100
Exactly.
designs, connecting a CAT-M to the cloud, or connecting maybe a unique LoRa solution to the cloud.
Yeah.
And so it's those kinds of things that, I think with the engineering staffs working together of, the customer engineer, the design engineer that's building the product, the Bare Conductive engineering staff with what you guys have created, and then the Future Electronics AEG helping to customize some of that wireless solution and that IoT solution. I think that's a really powerful combination that's going to accelerate time to market. Whether you are, a more sophisticated company like IKEA, who does have a lot more engineering staff than maybe we would think, or if you are a building materials company that's just doing tiles. You never
Exactly.
thought you'd need electronics before, but all of a sudden you're selling a product into Home Depot, and you need to make this easy for the tile installer. I think between our
Yeah.
companies, we can absolutely help make that a very successful endeavor. Um,
I I agree. I couldn't say it better. That I think the building materials example is great. It's exactly what I was mentioning, where they, that hypothetical company is aware that IoT will touch them and that there may be value to be created from engaging with it.
yeah,
But whether they like it or not, they're going to butt up against it. And I think
yeah,
one of the barriers is feeling overwhelmed by an entirely new technology set. And I think people who are working in IoT tend to have a collaborative mindset, in my experience, and
yeah,
realize that partnerships are the way to make that work. And that's not true of every industry. And so, for that tile company, I think they should see that future working with Bare is an amazing way to create a strong partnership, which allows them to take care of that whole stack. Because if they approached us, I would say, look, we are great at detecting something behind the tile, whatever the use case is, and
yeah.
we can get that information to the internet in a limited set of ways, but it exists in an entire context around, and that context is really critical. And so, Future provides so much experience and other technology which makes the application that much stronger.
Yeah, yeah, and absolutely our goal. So thank you for that. And I think the partnership here, I think, is a phenomenal thing. And in the areas of technology and the whole, the engineering customers that are coming out of what you guys are doing is really incredible. And I think opening
Mm,
up a whole new world to where electronics are going to play over time, which is going to be a lot of fun to watch and a lot of fun to be part of. And I think
mm,
that's you mentioned the community of engineers and how there's not, we're willing to help each other in the IoT space. We work
yeah,
together because we're all excited about it. We all want
totally.
it to be successful. And so, we don't see when our competitor maybe comes up with something cool. It's not one of those, oh gosh, so, they beat
Yeah,
me to it. It's, wow, that's awesome. Now we've got a whole lot of the stuff I can do. I can learn from what they've done and maybe even, take the next leap
yeah,
with that.
yeah.
And that's one of the fun things about engineering these days. I think that that partnership, that desire to see everybody be successful, is
Mm,
a really cool thing. So,
mm,
well, Matt,
definitely.
I can't thank you enough for the time. This has been an absolutely incredible conversation. For anyone that's watching and has your own designs where you're looking to integrate some Bare Conductive product into your designs, or if you're just interested in finding out more, please
Mm,
feel free to email us at shapingthefuture@futureelectronics.com. Again, that's shapingthefuture@futureelectronics.com. We'd love to help you out with your design, make you successful, make introductions to the Bare Conductive team. And again, can't thank you enough for the time today, Matt. All the best.
yeah, thank you too, Todd. See you soon.